Hey there, and welcome to Marriage Talks, a real, authentic, and relatable podcast about how to thrive in your marriage. I'm Elizabeth Ann.
And I'm Michael.
Today, we are going to be talking about a topic that hits close to home not only for our guests, but possibly for many of you listening. We are going to be talking about the struggles of losing a job and the stress it can have on a marriage with our sweet friends, Maria Aleandra and Jules from the Couple Shift podcast. But before we get into the topic, I want to introduce them because they're amazing and this bio is so good. All right, here we go. Maria Aleandra and Jules are the hosts of the Couple Shift, a podcast that shares the ups and downs of married life as entrepreneurs. After working in traditional 9-to-5 jobs for many years, they now run a self-development company focusing on coaching and content creation for other leaders and entrepreneurs. They've been together for 10 years and are parents to 3-year-old son, Skylar, and fur baby, Nova. Some fun facts. They met at a karaoke bar, which is so cool. They once canoed for 15 miles to stay in a treehouse in the middle of nowhere. I could never do that. And they both love superhero movies. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hey, what's up?
How are you guys?
Oh, we're so good.
We're great.
So excited. Thank you, Michael and Elizabeth, for having us.
Yes, we're so
Yeah.
pumped. Once we were on y'all's podcast, we're like, okay, we need to sit down because we will have them on ours.
We got to do this again.
Yes.
We had so much fun on ours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
How are you guys? I know that we've all been now like in quarantine for a really long time. You guys doing okay with that?
As your eyes got larger there. Yeah, no, we're doing good. I mean, I think our son, he's got so much energy now more than ever, and I think it's one of those, like, it's all pumped up. I think today he even said that he wanted to go to school again.
Yes.
So, and that's the first time
Yeah,
he
it's the
said that.
first time he said in the past
So
5 weeks or almost 5 weeks.
Yeah.
He said, Mom, I want to go to school. I don't want to be at home. I was like, what? And then he goes,
We're like,
why don't
"So
you
do
take
we."
me to school anymore? And I'm like, this is a 3-year-old, like, with his little like attitude, like,
Yeah.
come on, Mom, why? What's going on?
Yeah.
It was really funny. He's had a blast,
Yeah.
and overall, but I guess he does miss his friends, and he was going to a really wonderful school that we love. So, but yeah, I mean, I think overall, I'm really proud of how we've teamed up for hashtag quarantine life, and it's been fairly smooth. I think we haven't had any major massive breakdowns. We've had a couple of rough moments, and a lot of stuff is going on, but
we can get frustrated with each other and things like that happen. I think we have a good flow. I think we have a good understanding of what needs to be done during the day and stuff like that. And but because we're all stuck here, there are moments where we're like with each other, and I think that's normal. I think that can happen because you still need to make time for yourself too. So to make sure. And sometimes I think when we get into those moments where we're like frustrated with each other, it's like, okay, I think that it's time for
a timeout.
A timeout.
Everybody
Everybody needs to go and just take it easy.
Go to your respective corners. Everybody needs a timeout.
Basically, yeah. How about you guys?
So funny.
Well, I am beat. I actually took like a shot of coffee before tonight. Her dad and I built a fence, actually 2 fences across the front of our house. It's about a 12-foot span on each, but it is just backbreaking work. So I'm like super tired after setting posts yesterday and then putting all the fence parts up today, building the gates. But it looks amazing, and it was all worth it. Yeah,
nice.
For sure.
So that's
Good
me.
stuff.
Like I've been outside for the entire weekend basically. So she's been solo in the house for a lot of that. So I don't know how it's going in here.
Well, I don't mind being in the house with the kids. It's kind of like the norm, because he worked as long as basically a typical work day. But yeah, it's just kind of like towards the end, like after dinner, and 3 kids who all like 3 different things, but it's like, here's one thing for dinner, so if you don't eat it, I'll give you some carrots. But yeah, by that point, I'm like, okay, I need a timeout.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been good. I think since last time we talked to you, like Michael was still seeing patients every day and he was still working. But shortly after that, his work hours diminished drastically. And so last week he only worked like 3 days a week, and then this week that's starting right now, he doesn't work at all. Um,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
for like health peace of mind, I'm like, oh, praise the Lord.
Yeah.
But after that, it's like, but he's not working. And it's not
Working.
that I want him out of a house, it's like there's financial
Yeah.
things that go with
Yeah.
that, so
Yep.
Yeah.
that's yeah, that's
Mm.
exciting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah, I think other than that, it's been like so last week he worked, but then the week before that he didn't, and he actually homeschooled the kids every day, and I was like, "Okay, see you later, I'm gonna
Sweet.
go bake something."
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I like it.
Nice.
So that was a nice little, like, for us, role reversal, as far as, like, schooling and stuff, and so, he's gonna I mean, I think you're gonna plan to do it this week, with
She's
the
like,
kids.
I
Like,
think
I think
it would be
"Hey,
great if
We'll
you'll be
see.
great. You're going to do
your
it.
idea,
hint,
you said
hint."
you wanted to do it.
You
So
liked it, you got it. It's your
yeah,
job.
you're so good at it, honey. It's one of
Yeah.
those moments when you're
You're
like, babe,
just
you're the king of homeschooling.
so
You're
talented, and
so
it's your gift.
talented.
I
You're
work for baked
gifted.
goods. That's how I like to get paid, baked goods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a little bit of a change, but, we're just I mean, what else can you do but take it one day at a time, you know?
Yep.
So that's
Absolutely.
kind of been our plan, but I think, with all that's been going on for, I mean, Michael's had a drastic reduction in hours, but, um and obviously a lot of people have lost their job, and I would love, MA, for you to tell us, like, because I know this has been a few years for you, but the
Mhm.
feelings are still very real to, I think, no matter the timeline for anybody, especially now, like what it felt like, what you were going through after you lost your job.
Yeah. So it was 2 years in February. So yeah, not that long ago. And it's a company I worked for nearly 16 years. So right out of college, I started off with them in California, then moved here to Florida. So it was a long span, lots of growth in the company. And essentially, I was laid off. It was February 6th, 2018. And I was laid off because a few positions were being eliminated from the department and there were some consolidations happening. So I got the call to HR to, come downstairs and they had the talk with me. And then it was basically one of those like, you have 15 minutes to give in your laptop, your ID, your corporate card, and say goodbye to everybody and go. And I was like, uh, okay, okay. And so two thoughts came through my mind. First, it was like a total out of body experience. And as I think about that now, and a couple of people have asked me about it during this time, it's I feel for anybody out there who's experiencing this right now because whether you're being laid off or your hours are being cut down, or you have a sense of uncertainty around your job now, it's that feeling of just getting the rug pulled from underneath you. It's that feeling of your life just being kind of like it's like everything's been put in this box and the box just gets shaken like out like all the contents like spill out and all of a sudden there's this sense of like what like okay what now. And so I remember having that. It was like an out of body experience as they were talking to me and telling me about the logistics of the layoff and thinking, wow, okay, so not saw this coming, and there's something in here that's really good for me if I lean into that space of openness and trust and faith, even though I don't understand this right now. And the fact is that, like many other people out there, I was one of those who was really good at my job and also had a deeper calling for something else. And so at that moment, that sort of like cracked open in me in a way of, wow, this is could be one of those moments where a new door, a new window is opening up somewhere. Um, and that was like a little micro moment, right? Like most of it was just like a slow motion kind of. I remember saying goodbye to everybody. I remember the people that were reporting into me looking at me like, what? Like everybody was so surprised. as one of the top performers in the department. It was just one of those things that wasn't performance based. It was just like,
yeah, she had a lot of people who would be like, they're crazy. What are they doing?
I had people then calling, like, it wasn't my boss who made the decision. It was, somebody above her, and a lot of changes that happened in the department in the months preceding that. And actually, it had been really, really challenging for me. It had been a period of a lot of constriction at work, and so because so much was shifting, not in a good way, and so it. I remember people saying, I called and said that they made a mistake, and I'm like, okay, but what's done is done, and so then it's like if I piece it back together, I remember getting my stuff, getting in the car, and then I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna go pick up Skylar. This is still like 2:00. I'll pick up Skylar, and then I'll go home. And I thought, well, I've got to call Jules, but then Jules was a teacher at the time, so of course he was in class. I'm like, I'm not gonna call him or text him because he's gonna feel something's off. However way I position this, and I don't want him to stress out until he's complete with his classes. And so he gets home, and I'll let you take this part of the story because you lived that with me.
Well,
when you got home and you saw me here.
Yeah, I saw her car and I'm like, this is weird. Like she would usually get home like around earliest 7.
Yeah, it was late.
7:30.
Long hours. Yeah.
So, well, you go in a little bit later too.
Well, yes. It was like 9 or 9:30, but
yeah,
still.
yeah, but still, it's long days, and those were normal days. Like
yeah.
when there was a heavy time because they had the time crunch on something, like she'd be stuck there till like 9 sometimes. So, for the first year of Skylar's life and going to school, is like she would get home very, very late. So I get home, I open the door, or she opens the door for me. I'm like, "Hi, what are you doing here? Where did you pick up Skylar?" And she's like, I got laid off. And I was like, what? Like it was just utter shock. And to make things even more interesting.
Oh yeah.
That day, was it that day?
That morning.
Literally. We signed a
contract.
We signed a contract on a house. That morning.
Yeah.
So thank God. Yeah. I was like,
crazy.
Yeah, we didn't mention that. We hadn't
so,
shared this with you guys before.
An added.
Yeah, so this was on a Tuesday, and that weekend we had been house hunting because again we were like, all right, we were ready to expand from this apartment. We found this beautiful home, and we made the decision. Everything went through very quickly that Monday. The person who was selling the house loved us. She had a few other people interested, but she loved us, and so
it was funny
that Tuesday we had sent like the digital PDF with our signatures, and
it was the smoothest purchase. From one of my my cousin who was helping us out at the time. He's like, this is super smooth. And I guess it was like, these are never that smooth. Home purchases are never that smooth.
And you know how when you buy a new house, you get an inspector to go in and check it out. So I had literally just hung up with the inspector and made an appointment for that Friday. I hung on my cell phone and then got a call like a second later from HR. So we went from like 9 a.m. having sent in the contract for this new home, so excited for the possibilities, to then 1:30 p.m. me getting like, okay, no more.
There was a moment there too. So I get home and she tells me, and I literally, the first thing I was like, okay, we got to cancel this. So thank God for 7-day grace period.
Yeah.
So we didn't get hurt on that, but you had a moment where like, well, maybe we don't do it yet. Maybe we don't cancel. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. It's like, it's not meant to be. We thought it was the most amazing thing, but this is a sign.
Yeah.
Someone's telling us something here. And it's like, no, it's not meant to be. We'll figure this out. And so
so that day, the rest of that afternoon was it
was weird,
very surreal. Jules made the call. We got the house canceled. I'm pretty sure there must have been some tears at that moment from me, but it was all still kind of like, again, out of body. And that day was just like, well, okay, here we go. This is something new. And then the next morning, it was almost like this unfolding of me waking up to this new reality. Because then I go to bed, and the next morning I wake up, and it's like, oh, I have nowhere to go. I don't have the pressure of And my job, again, the past few months specifically, had been really, really difficult, like emotionally taxing on me. So it did feel like this big sense of relief. And I remember dropping Skylar off in my like shorts and a tank top and, dropping him off and then sitting in the car and having this moment of like this emptiness and this very bizarre feeling of, it's not only that I don't have anywhere to go right now, but even if I had, for example, taken a day off before or worked from home, which, wasn't super common, but I would have been on my phone, on email, on calls, on all the time. It was basically like my world. And it was like nothing. It was like nothing. And then the rest of that week, I just flowed through the week with this sense of like, okay. It was like every moment was a new moment. I remember dreaming about some sort of job related dream for a month. Every single night, I swear, like it was like my subconscious was processing everything because I felt from the beginning, I felt fairly grounded and fairly like resilient about it. Like I didn't go into like, oh my God, woe is me. And I do remember having feelings of like, wow, like not understanding why they didn't value me, not understanding why nobody fought for me, not understanding why nobody talked to me to try to figure something out, to maybe create something else, because there were so many people in the company that really did appreciate my work. And I felt like abandoned. I remember feeling deeply like abandoned, like, wow, these people really just let me. And that was, I guess, that like.
But I think you need to also mention that the year before that was you were on paternity leave. Maternity. That's me. Sorry. I'm terrible. Maternity leave. And there was constant changing already happening at the business, at the company.
Yeah.
And so bosses, I think you went through.
I went through a ton of bosses within like a year and a half, like 3 different direct bosses. And at the time I was a senior director of marketing and branding for a pretty big television network. And so
you've mentioned it already, so it's okay.
Yeah, for Telemundo, which is part of NBC Universal. So so I had, at the VP level, and I had been vying for that VP position for a while, and I had been told like, yes, you're almost there. But for some reason, they would just keep bringing someone else from outside because they thought they brought whatever new. And so it was a challenge for me to get to know a whole new boss all over again. And then that last period was just
they even wanted you to come back early from maternity leave at one point.
Yes, I made the choice. I had the option of doing a 6-month maternity leave, which was, absolutely incredible. And thank God I took the whole 6 months and didn't succumb to when they asked me to come back early. And I was very firm about our decision and the choice we'd made and how we budgeted for it and everything, because I could have come back early and still gotten laid off a few months after that with like, because I came back May of 2017, and then by February of 2018 is when they laid me off. So yeah, it was tough. And I remember also within the first week of the experience telling Jules, I said, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing is that I'm not going to apply to a single quote unquote traditional job. I'm not going to do that. And I think at first Jules was like, okay, honey, you babe were incredibly supportive. You were like a total, like really, 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 a great rock for me. But I still think that at first he had this vibe of like, she'll get over it. Like she needs to like detox from this experience and then she'll get over it.
I always say that she had cycles. Like she would have these cycles at work at Telemundo, because there would be periods where she's like, I can't take this. I want to find something new. I'm not being challenged. And then 6 months later, she's like, oh my God, everything is great. It's amazing. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm like,
yeah.
Same thing happened last year.
Yeah. So I think when I said I wasn't gonna like apply to any regular jobs, I think he was probably like, okay, just give her a few weeks to,
let it sit in.
Yeah. And so we, I'd gotten a severance package because of the amount of years I had been in the company, so that allowed us a little bit of time, and we talked about it. And Jules was like, you take time to breathe, to like disengage and detox from that incredibly like strenuous like hamster wheel you were on, and find your flow, and then we'll get back on our feet.
Figure it out.
And it's all good. And then that led to me going in like a really deep self-exploration journey of, okay, well, this is a blank slate for me to do something that's more on purpose and aligned with who I really want to be in this world and how I want to serve in this world. And so that took a few different iterations in terms of when I was thinking and brainstorming. And finally, it was probably in April that I landed on, okay, I'm going on this entrepreneurial path, and then had that conversation with Jules, which was also really interesting because he looked at me like, no.
No,
like,
we're not doing this again.
I was like, babe, so I've crunched some numbers.
Yeah.
And, based on what we have and with your salary, and, he was a teacher at the time. So the salary wasn't like, it was.
I mean, private school, but still,
Yeah.
teachers are not.
Yeah.
Shout out to teachers because,
Yeah. And at that point in that conversation, you even told me, you said, babe, I kind of thought that you were going to take some time and then sort of go back to
something in
rocking it in some other corporate marketing type of job because you're really good at that. And that makes more sense. Because again, everything was really based around my job, our income, our benefits, our everything. So we were used to that. We were used to that reality. And shaking all of that up was a really important and courageous decision, I think, for both of us, because we just stepped fully into this unknown, and then that kept unfolding and unfolding. So, yeah.
Were you gonna say something?
Well, I was gonna say, from the husband's perspective, Jules, it sounds like you did an excellent job of supporting. Was that kind of just like a conscious decision, or did you feel like that was just kind of came natural?
I feel like it came natural. From the moment I met my wife, it's like I knew what she did, and she was always I get the sense, I always got the feeling of like she can go wherever she wants to go. Like her ceiling is whatever she puts her mind to it, she can achieve it. It's just the way she is. Not saying that I'm not like that, but I feel like that's not something that's in me innate. Like settling for her is, I don't want to say failure.
It's like kryptonite.
But it's like kryptonite. It's her. She doesn't like to settle. And for me, I'm comfortable in certain things. I can get comfortable, and it's not that I don't have a drive. I definitely do, especially if I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, there's something else there that she has, and I never want to limit her. I never want to be something that is going to stop her. And she felt, passionate about becoming an entrepreneur. Yeah, it was a little bit difficult at first, because we've tried different things in the past, and it was just, we were just missing that extra push, I guess, or it just wasn't right. And that was my concern. But I always supported her, and I've always told her, they were that, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you feel that's going to make you better, then let's do it. Like after she was laid off, I continued working, continued teaching, and we made some adjustments and stuff like that. And she started to do work on what she ends up doing now, which is the life and business coaching. And she went to do some programs where it involved her to leave to go to San Diego for, what was it, like 2-3 weeks?
Yeah. I basically, during all of 2019, I flew to San Diego every month, sometimes twice a month.
Yeah.
Which meant a lot of expansion for us as a family in many ways. And
yeah. So she would be gone. I'd wake up a little bit earlier, get him ready for school, because I had to take him to school. I'd do my work at school. If I had to stay, I couldn't really stay too much later because I had to go pick him up and then take care of everything here. And now I was just doing everything at home and making sure he was good, and she was, we check in on her and see what she's doing. She's doing fine and stuff like that. Now this was the longest period I think was like 15 days, maybe a little bit less.
A little bit less. I think it was like,
actually, it was supposed to be longer, but then you came out like a surprise flight. I'm like, what are you doing here? She's like, I missed you. I was like, okay, great. I can sleep in tonight. Good night. So it was an adjustment, but I always, like I've said, my wife can do whatever she wants. She can achieve anything that she puts her mind to.
She's a graceful and majestic shark.
Yeah. She truly is. And so I understood that from the beginning. I think from the get go, I was like, I'm dealing with someone that's, like we always have this analogy. Like she always says, I'm her anchor, right? And then I was like, well, I feel that you're like more like a sail or a kite, like you're just flying. So together we work together, so she doesn't fly away, and I hold her grounded.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Very much
That
so.
is awesome. That is a
Very much
So
great
so.
analogy.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's really nice when you have that sort of dynamic in a marriage, because if you have two kites, you're like, "Ooh,"
yeah.
Or
like,
two anchors, forget
Or two
about it.
yeah.
anchors. Forget about it. Yeah,
Yes.
Happens.
What do you want to do tonight? Nothing. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's we she helps my weaknesses and I help her
Mhm.
weaknesses. We balance our
Yeah.
strengths and weaknesses with each other.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that in terms of sort of like the big visioning, I'm totally like the kite and the visionary, and he's like the anchor, sort of more like the hell guy. When it comes to our energy, though, like there's a reason why Jules' nickname is High Octane Jules. Like has energy like to go round and round in circles for 24 hours. And I'm more of the zen, serene, like,
Yeah.
I'm very animated, but I'm much more of a like, so in that sense it's almost like we're the opposite, I think,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah. For sure. On certain things, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you guys talked a little bit about like how well more of like the conversations that were had, but I'd love for you guys to maybe go in a little bit deeper into like how it affected you guys, because like, it's interesting how as adults I think sometimes we don't realize how much of ourselves or our identity we put into our job, and then
Mhm.
how that shapes your marriage.
Yeah.
um if you're not careful, depending on, everything depends on the type of job and everything,
Sure.
um but I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit more about how that total shift, because I mean, ma, you were at that job for such a long time, like that's a
Mhm.
huge thing. It's not like, oh, I was just at this part-time gig for like 3 months. Like, no,
Yeah.
you moved, you uprooted for that job. So I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit more about how it affected your marriage because there was such a big shift.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that came to mind as you started to ask that question, especially I love the piece about identifying with a certain job. And that sort of informs the dynamic of the family and the couple and the partnership. And I think for me personally, one of the biggest growth spaces and challenges with Jules was how to begin communicating what I really wanted to create and what I saw for us in a way that would land with him would in a way that we could explore it even when he was more resistant, because I'm much more open to creating something new, and he's more of a protector. It's similar to the dynamic. Most, not all, but most women are more of the creators. We literally create life, and the guys are the protectors. They protect what's been created. It's the dynamic we have. So I think for me, and a lot of the conversations we had, so much of it was like on my end, really like growing in my own, like using my voice in a different way, um, in a more vulnerable way with him. And on his end, I really appreciated his openness. And even when in conversations, when at first he was like, we always have this joke where the first thing that comes out of Jules's mouth is usually
No.
no. And then it's like, you
Okay.
kind of go around, and he's like, okay, so even in that, he was always open to the conversations. So I remember a lot of that, a lot of sitting around the kitchen counter, like, okay, so, and me getting the courage. And even though we've always had a great communication, but here's what happens, and this is actually a lot of what I support my clients with, is that even in relationships where you have a great relationship with your partner, the level of authenticity in your communication and vulnerability that is required for you to co-create something new together, like really, really, truly from your soul, is next level. And so it requires this new space of really risking that identity of, hey, like we sort of had this understanding that I would keep growing on this corporate path and that's what this would mean. And that's not what I see anymore. And actually for a long time is what I hadn't seen, but I didn't know how the heck anything could change because it all felt so like that was my track. And so for me to become more open with him was pivotal, and to communicate with him in a way where, dialing back my own expectations of how I thought, like any assumptions I had of how he should respond or how he could respond, and just leaving it, leaving it open so that then I wouldn't get triggered by like, oh wow, I just opened my heart to him with what I want to do, and then he shot me down, and what does that mean? And so there was a lot of that from my end of opening up in a whole new way, and it was like the it felt risky. um I'm also, personally someone who values being right, who values,
She doesn't like getting critiqued.
I don't like getting critiqued. I don't like, I have one of my sort of core wounds from like one of the things I get to like work through in this lifetime is is dealing with failure, dealing with not being right, dealing with getting criticized and all that stuff. So anytime I put myself in a vulnerable position, I'm like open for, attack, and that's not comfortable for me. So imagine me saying to him, hey, so I see this and this and this, which is totally like out of the world kind of bonkers right now for the flow we've had. And how do you feel about that? And then being open to whatever he said and not getting shot down by it, and knowing that there's space here to keep communicating. I'm curious about you, babe.
Yeah, I felt, there was times where you decided to do something. You took that plunge in the beginning, especially in the beginning of deciding that she already decided, no, I want a new path for myself. That she did it, and then she came back to me, and I'll look on the, I don't know, the bank account, or I'll look at something else, and I'll be like, oh, what is this?
No, but that was before. I did do that,
Yeah,
but that was before.
that was before.
That wasn't after the layoff. I once hired a coach and didn't tell him about it.
Yeah.
This was back in 2016.
Yeah,
I hired a coach and straight up did not tell him about it.
Nothing. Didn't say anything. And
I
I'm
was
like,
oh, that's just some,
what's going on here?
Thing I'm doing.
So
no, but this one, I will say you're right. I did take the plunge, but I told you like
you told
right
me,
after.
Yes.
And it was still it was like, all right, I took this plunge. This is what I see. And it was a massive trust exercise for you. Like,
yes,
trust fall like no other. Because it was
Yes.
a decent investment to work on my self-development and my professional development so that I could really lay the foundation for what I wanted to create, for what I knew was possible. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, and it was because we were saying of like, you were worried about, oh, I was already gonna shoot you down.
Totally.
So you didn't want to. You rather it was almost like ask for forgiveness instead of ask for permission.
Totally. I was like, if I talk to Jules about this now, he's not gonna
I'm just
get
gonna say
it.
no.
He's gonna say no, and then so yes,
it's one
I
of
went
those.
rogue.
I have this. It's a reflex. I feel like it's where she's like, hey, why don't we do? No, and then I think about it. I go, okay, it might work out. But it's almost like my brain is like, first say no, then think about it, then go back, which is stupid because we're just gonna fight for a moment there. And I'm like, maybe I just go, okay, honey, let me think about it, and just replace that word. It would be so much easier for us.
It would be.
So what you're saying is you're not a fan of change.
It's difficult. It was difficult for sure. Yes. Because like I said, like I'm a kind of person that can get comfortable in a groove and settle, and I'll be okay with something. And she is always looking for something more. And so it's an interesting balance where I'm like, okay, I want to have this kind of like settled kind of view, but at the same time, I don't want to slow her down, or I don't want to impede her from getting to what she wants to do.
Yeah. I have several family members who are not fans of change. So like when somebody's like, nope, I'm like, I know someone just like you. But it's really cool though, with like all this that happened, like this major change that happened with you guys, you guys handled it, like the feeling of not controlling something.
Yeah.
You handled it totally differently. She's like, I don't have control over this. So how do I get control? And then you're like, Well, like she advanced and you retreated almost, because it was just kind of like what you were in the moment kind of felt
Mhm.
like, because I could totally relate to both situations where it's like, I don't like not having control, and so I'm like, "Okay, well, how do I gain that control?" And then but then it's also like, I will definitely have moments where if I don't have control, it's like, "Well, if I just don't do anything, then I have control in not doing anything for a moment." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it's as you guys are sharing, it's really cool and amazing how differently you initially saw it and
Mhm.
how you were like, "Well, we need to make this work. Like, this is us together. We will make it work." And that's I think that's really amazing because, um, the more we get to know you guys, the more we are seeing your, like, personalities and, like, how you guys handle things and how you guys respond to things, and I love the differences, um because honestly, Michael and I are very similar in a
Mm.
lot of things. So
As
we
he
I
looks
think
up
Oh,
and thinks
Michael's
about
I
it
like,
for a moment.
I
are
do
we?
I think that we are
I
similar.
think we've become more similar from being together a long time, but it
That
didn't
could
start out that
probably
way.
be it. But we also have other friends who are like polar opposites and
Yeah.
they've been married for over a decade and they struggle with things, but it's like this is a good struggle.
Mhm.
And so I love to see other couples um how they arrived on the same page because there's obviously times when we're not on the same page and we're like we need to work through this and get on the same page. So I love that we're talking through this because I know that other people will have those scenarios where they have a total mix up and one reacts one way and one reacts another way.
Yeah.
But it's just
Mhm.
so important to come together and to find that common page of whatever it might be so that you can move forward as a unit instead of trying to move forward individually and it's going to be like all over the
Mhm.
place.
Yeah.
So
I
I
I
love
feel like
that.
a lot of people are a lot of couples can fear that, that argument or disagreement or
Mhm.
and tend to avoid it. And I think for a healthy relationship, no, you actually got to go in there and go at it and discuss it with each other and figure it out because then you grow from that. You only grow from discomfort. You don't grow from feeling okay and comfortable.
Mhm.
You're just settling, right? So it was difficult, and it is difficult, and we continue to have run into things um that can be difficult, especially at this time and as in the beginning.
Mhm.
But because we confront it and we try to figure it out and work together at it, I know we will persevere and be better on the other side.
Yeah.
You know.
And I want to say too, because the dynamic that we have of, and again, other women out there might resonate, is when as a woman, you have this idea. It's not just about how you want to grow and how you want to rise in your own life and your power and how you can serve the world, and it's also how your family gets to grow in a sense of shifting and having more freedom, having more. So that was really, really a core part of what was coming up for me, and I knew that it was going to be a challenge for Jules because he's not wired to take risks. He's definitely wired to take a risk out in like nature somewhere and do something
Yeah.
crazy, but he's not wired to take a risk when it comes to what the path we've taken. I don't think if you interviewed us 3 years ago
Oh yeah.
and said, "Hey, so 3 years from now, you're going to be doing this and this and this and this," we
And
would have been like,
yeah.
I would have been like, "Oh my god, that sounds amazing!"
Yeah.
But there's no way.
I'm
There's
glad
no
you I'm
way.
glad you brought that up because when I was still teaching, I think it was even harder for me to, even though I was being, you know, giving you that giving you that space or giving you that opportunity to go to San Diego and do this and not giving you
Mhm.
kind of the grief of like you left us, like,
Yeah, never.
no. The people around me at my work were living that 9 to 5 job. Oh, this is what we do. We go to work, come home, do this. Weekends is the kid has soccer or baseball or whatever, track, and then they go, and that kind of like, and then, oh, what are you doing for um spring break, or what are you doing for this? And it's like that kind of like structured because that's the way it is. And then, no, the summer and this and that, and I was around people that had that kind of settled, structured life, and she was already not living that, you know? And so that would make it once I left
That's a good
the
point.
once I left the work, once I left teaching, it opened my eyes of like, no, there's many other ways to live and a lot better ways to live.
Yeah.
And you have control of that.
Yeah.
You just need to see
And
it.
we both grew up in very traditional, structured,
Yeah.
wonderful families. Like, thankfully, we both come from very united families,
Yeah.
Parents married for many years, but that same 9 to 5 dynamic, no entrepreneurs really. One of my brothers, actually two of my younger brothers, but one of them specifically was more entrepreneurial. When he was 25, he was like, I know what I want to do. And I always envied him because I was like, wow, like deep inside, I knew I was wired for that.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't have the guts to do that. And so something else that Jules and I always talked about, especially at the beginning, is like just acknowledging the fact that what he saw modeled for him from his parents was that very traditional, kind of life.
Yeah.
And I had the same. So we didn't come from parents who took risks at all.
Not really. But what's interesting is they didn't take risks, but their parents took major risk. So my mother is I'm Cuban, and my mother's a Peter Pan kid, which is basically when Castro took over Cuba. Basically, they were kids. There was time in the '60s that you could send your kids off into the U.S. or to other countries, I guess. And she went with my mom and my uncle. Her parents decided, no, you're going. We want a better life for you, not knowing if they were going to be together again. So they took a major risk and said, "This is not what we want."
My dad is a Peter Pan kid as well, and his parents made the same choice with him and his brother, and sent them to New Mexico to live with
a foster parent
family that they never
met. My mother was lucky that we had our aunt, her aunt in Jersey, so she lived in Jersey for about 3 years. Luckily, after 3 years, my grandparents were able to come in different ways. And my father, in his story, was my grandfather, my father's father. He had dual citizenship with he was Spanish. He's a Spaniard with Spain and Cuba, and so he had his own business in Cuba, and he knew for his family this is not the place to be. And basically, one day, my dad remembers a day like he was just playing in the living room. They lived in Havana. And he said, "Let's go. We're leaving. Leave your things. We're getting out of here." Literally, like nothing on them. And they got on a boat. And my grandfather told him, "You can't cry. Keep a straight face. You're just gonna go out." And my grandfather had to do some stuff to make sure that they didn't get searched or anything like that, because other families were getting searched on these ships. And they left to Spain, I believe, for a year, and then were able to come into the U.S. and came to Miami.
Yeah.
So our grandparents,
yeah,
they took a plunge, a major plunge.
And I think that's why our parents, especially both of his parents and my father, are much more traditional and value that sense of stability, because it was shaken at such an early age.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a core part of how we grew up, with that sense of you sort of follow this path, you follow this track, you stay in sort of a safety lane.
And they were all successful at what they do. And
yeah. So. But I think then when there's this inner calling to like evolve in some way, then that's why so many people out there are sitting in jobs. Well, right now nobody's sitting in a cubicle. But so many people are sitting in wherever they're sitting in a job and going, this is not for me, because there's this deep sort of yearning of something else. And following that is the piece that can be so hard, because we value a sense of quote unquote safety that keeps us in that lane, and doesn't really make us like go
take a chance.
Yeah. Well, it's easier to be comfortable. And I love, Jules, what you said, that growth, say it again, growth.
You only grow from in discomfort. You only grow in discomfort.
Yes. I did not want to butcher it. I was like, please say it.
Okay.
It's so true. So true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like the things that I've accomplished, the best things I've ever accomplished, was because I was uncomfortable, because I was forced. like we said it we've said this many times or in previous podcasts of like, it's, it's a lot easier to dip a toe in the water and then pull it out, but because you're not gonna, that's the not easier, I'm sorry, you're not gonna take the dive if you're just slowly dipping a toe. It's a lot it's you're more successful if you just jump in, you know.
Yeah.
Just dipping a toe, you're gonna pull it out, you're not gonna go in.
I can get the last one.
You want the last one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So could you guys share 3 mindset changes that you both implemented to stay strong in your marriage during your time of uncertainty a couple years ago? Yeah. I don't know if you guys made lists and shared it between each other, or if you have separate lists.
One of my favorite words.
Yeah.
3 mindset changes. Okay. So, I think I'll touch again on what I said before. For me, really leaning into opening up in how I communicated with Jules and really expressing, taking the risk to express what I really wanted to create, what I saw was possible. So that was huge for me. Um, I think the second one would be really sitting in a place of expansion, um, really leaning into the trust of knowing that when you're called towards something that feels very real and very true, even if you don't understand the how, you set an intention for what it is that you see at the end of that journey or along that journey, and then taking like the tiny little step after step after step. I always say building momentum is magic, because then you begin to collect evidence of what's possible. So being in a space of expansion and beginning to take steps. And I think the third one um was, really challenging the notion of what sort of normal is, challenging the notion of what other people think is normal or what other people expect from you. Could be your very close family or your friends, and being okay with people looking at you a little like
Yeah, I think
a
that's one of the
little
big
a little
ones.
cuckoo, like wait, what? You're gonna do
You're doing what?
what?
Yeah.
Because then before you get into your 3 mindset things, babe, the one thing we hadn't mentioned along the story is that then there came a point where I said to Jules, I remember this was like end of January before that school year finished for him, and I said, I'm feeling like this will be your last year working at school, and then we can actually make the choice to do something else together. And I said, how would you feel about that? He was like, your first reaction was, that would be awesome.
It was a rough year.
Because he was crazy
Yeah.
stressed out. He was
My
like,
last year there
that would be
was a really rough
awesome.
year.
But I still think inside you were probably like, okay, that sounds
That's not
cute,
gonna
but
happen.
that's not going to happen. And then sure enough, we ended up, we kept talking about it and kept that space of openness. And then he ended up, leaving that job, and we made the decision to start working together and join forces and grow a company that, will eventually become way more impactful and robust than if I would have just done it on my own. And because we really wanted to lean into the freedom that could create for us. And so the fact that the journey of me getting laid off and me stepping into entrepreneurship, and then you deciding to leave your job to so that we could work together, to then everything we've created since then, is like incredible for a span of just a couple of years.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
most of those I see the same way. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the things that has been something I'm still growing in and is the trustworthiness. And that's okay, we're married and we've been together for so long, and of course I trust her, but
Mm-hmm.
and it's this has puts you in an uncomfortable state, and it really tests that. And I think that's something that has been so important, because I trusted you when you left to San Diego and said, "Yeah, this is the right choice, that she needs to go and do this for these several weeks, and I'll man the fort here and get everything taken care of and work on that." And that has continued to be something that I continue to uh look to improve and be more trustworthy of her initiative, her decision making on certain things, and have to be okay with that.
Yeah. I think, see, from my experience, you've shown actually a lot of trust. I think it's because every time it's taken you really outside of your comfort zone
Yes.
and
Yeah.
into total unknown
Well, that's what I'm saying, that it
space.
continues to grow in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've always said Jules has been such a rock star because it's, I've basically shown him like, oh, this is what's possible. And he has this core belief, and he's a very grounded man. So the decisions that he makes come from a very grounded place, not from a, well, whatever, because
This
he's
is
not like
swinging.
that.
Yeah, I don't
He's
wing
not just
things.
like, oh, let's. So I know, and it took many conversations for me to also get very clear that this wasn't just, I can sort of show like open up the window, open up the door, but we get to walk through it together hand in hand, step by step. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to pull you over here because look at how cute this is over there. And that's, I was like, I never wanted to feel that way. So it required a lot of, really knowing that he was in that space. And there was always these moments when it would just kind of click like, okay. And then we take the next step. And so I feel like every door, it's almost like I open it and then he's like, okay. And then we
I'll
walk through it together. Yeah.
I think the other thing that I wanted to emphasize too was what other people think.
Yeah. So huge.
Because I can see how it's going to be very difficult for many couples taking a plunge like that, or losing a job and deciding, no, I want to do something totally different. Worrying about what family, friends would be like, what do you mean you're going to do this?
Yeah. We spend so much time.
Yeah.
I say we because it's happened to us, and I think we in the big we. I think we as humans spend so much time
worrying about what other
people think, worrying about other people's opinions. And it really comes down to, I love what you said, Elizabeth, earlier about the identity piece. It comes down to us being so afraid to let go of whatever identity we've already built. And anytime we choose to question that and step in a new direction and take off one of the masks or whatever, then it's basically like we open up ourselves to be questioned, we open up ourselves to be criticized, or we open up ourselves to it's a very vulnerable kind of raw space to be, and to have the courage to continue saying yes even though you're like, oh my god, I don't know what people are going to think about this, because ultimately, and the more courageous steps you take forward, the less and less it matters. I don't think that ever fully goes away, but it matters less and less, I think. And that's a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad always used to say, because I would be worried about like what people would say, because I like approval, and I like to be right, and I like to not make mistakes. And so, when somebody like says something negative or like gives you a hard time or like they're judging you, and like it just like really, it would really weigh me down.
Yeah.
And or it would upset me or something, and he would be like, "Just be thankful." The saying he always said was, "Just be thankful you don't have to go to bed with that person." In meaning like they don't follow you around,
That's
that
true.
you shed them off when
Yeah.
you walk away. And I was like, God, that's so true. Like, why do I carry that person's opinions or baggage or whatever? Like, I can shed them off in a second, just walk away. Now, of course, it's always hard, like, you do have to, like, stop thinking about it, but, that idea of, like, they don't follow me, their opinions don't follow me, their voice doesn't follow me, they stay there. And so I think that's a really good encouragement for others, like you were saying, just not letting that judgment or opinions follow you. If somebody is in a time of they lost their job and what are they gonna do, like, they now have an opportunity to it's kinda like, I always hear from, I listen to a lot of, like, actors or, like, producers, like, podcast stuff, and they're like, "We always came up with something amazing when our budget was super small," like, 'cause they had to think
Yeah.
creatively, so
Yeah, or you're about to be canceled.
right. So
Right.
you're in a
The
position where
comfort.
Yeah,
Discomfort.
discomfort, and it's like, "This is really uncomfortable, and I gotta meet certain expectations, but I've been giving, like, zilch resources. How do I make this work?" And so, it's really in a place of being able to, think outside of the box even though you've been placed in a really small one, and I
Yeah.
think that's a really good thing, for people to just kind of keep in mind, like, "Yeah, this is hard." Like,
Yeah.
the tears are real, the emotions are real, recognize them, process through them, but don't get stuck in them, you
Yeah.
know?
A really
So
powerful, a really powerful way to look at any time you get something, because I think back again to that moment when I got laid off and how many people right now might be experiencing that, and my heart goes out to you, and I remember, and you and I have talked about this, babe, that it would have been really, really, really difficult for me to make that decision on my own because of that box I was in. And so, really, truly, I felt like, something greater than me opened up a very powerful opportunity. Otherwise, I would have been right now probably working at the same place, feeling the same feelings of like, wow, I know I'm meant for something more, but blah, 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 whatever. And yes, we would have been in that house, and yes, all those things. But the level of sort of happiness and joy that we experience now is vastly different from the life we were living before. And so know that everything truly happens for you, and it may not be easy to understand at the time, but if you lean in from a space of um, really knowing that somehow your soul chose this at this moment in time in your life, and that you're never a victim to your circumstances. Like, as long as you don't see it as from a victim standpoint, and you see it from a space of inner power
An
and
opportunity.
possibility and opportunity, even if right now you might be crying and wondering what the heck is going to happen in my life. We've been there. And also knowing that you have enough power in you, that you have the resilience, you have the resourcefulness to create a whole new dynamic and really design a new life for yourself that's not in that default small kind of crunchy box that you were maybe in before. And so when you really look at life from that perspective, no matter what comes your way, and that's like a game changer. Leaning into that space of possibility rather than being a victim to your circumstances.
Mm. He
That is amazing.
yeah. Humans are resilient.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
If we allow ourselves to be, absolutely.
We are resilient, resourceful, determined, loving, courageous, creative. Like,
Yeah.
take this as anybody out there who's having a really hard time with losing a job or a partner losing a job. Imagine in a world where nothing is certain, anything is possible. And I know that sounds like, oh, that's a little optimistic for you to say. It's truth, because then what else is there? You're just going to, hide in a corner and not move forward. No, you've got to like seize whatever opportunity is in front of you in a new light, and look for the resources, which there are many podcasts, videos, books, to help give you a new perspective on what you might be experiencing, and really open up the communication with your partner and tell them how scared you are, and that you see something else as possible. And what could that look like? Play like the ultimate what if game
Yeah.
and see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, before we always tell everybody where they can find you. We're gonna do a challenge because we always do a challenge every single episode, but I wanna make sure that people know, where to find you guys.
Yeah. So you can find us. Our podcast is called The Couple Shift. And you can find us anywhere where you find podcasts. And then my website is mariaaleandra.com. My Instagram is at Maria Aleandra. And then from my Instagram, you can basically follow me anywhere. And, Jules and I are partners in crime and partners in possibility. So you can basically find us in the same places. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
My Instagram is
yeah.
high octane Jules. So
Yeah.
I
Maybe
love
we
it.
saying that.
Partners in possibility. I'm gonna start
Yes,
there
using
it
that.
is.
I love that.
the t-shirts are coming. The t-shirts are
Part-
coming.
I love it. So, well, our challenge today, so if you're a new listener, we always do a challenge every single episode, and it's just something we always talk about communication, always communicating with your spouse. So in the next 7 days, sit down with your spouse and talk about how the loss of a job, or maybe in a different circumstance, the reduction of work hours, is affecting you. Your spouse is there to help support and care for you, and it is difficult if you're not being honest. So communication is key. Talking about tough stuff is one of the ways you make your marriage stronger. So in the next 7 days, guys, do it. Um
Yes. Ooh,
Yes,
I feel that.
absolutely.
well,
Yeah.
I'm like, do it, because
Oh yeah.
I'm like, hey, I need to put something into action, whatever it
Mhm.
is. Yes, let's do it. So
Yes.
but for all you listening, we will leave links in the show notes for where you can connect with MA and Jules. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. That is really the best way to help others find out what we're doing here at Marriage Talks. And of course, you can always follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and those links will be in the show notes as well. So thanks, you guys, MA and Jules, for sharing all of this information. I felt like I know it's going to be helpful to so many people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for having us. This was an absolute pleasure. Honestly, you guys are
Yeah.
incredible. We love you, and we're happy that we bumped into each other on the path.
Yes.
Yay.
Thank you.
We love you guys too.